guys, this is Shay Jose, and today I'll be giving you a breakdown of my new single Transcendence, which is actually coming out on Paul Van Dyk's Vandit Alternative. This is more of a progressive house label, which is under the Vandit umbrella, which is Paul's main trance label. So this is my first debut on the label, which I'm pretty excited about. So today I'll be giving you a little bit of a breakdown on the track. So if you haven't heard it, I'll give you a little bit of a listen from the breakdown down to the drop. So here it is.
Just observe. I'm just creating space for what is still to come.
So just a little bit of a preview of my track. So by the time you watch this video, the track is actually probably out. So if you do like it, please consider supporting me, going to Beatport, buying a copy, and saving it on your Spotify. So without any further ado, let's get into the track. So as part of my productions, you've probably seen this before in some of my other videos, I tend to actually recycle a lot of my old projects. So this track, if you're familiar with my work, has a lot of components from my track Andromeda. You can really pick that out from the main lead, which is this one here, if I just solo it. So this is actually a preset that I've already given away as part of my Patreon program. So if you haven't done so, you can always join and actually grab this preset for free. So essentially what I ended up doing is I really enjoyed the breakdown of that track Andromeda that I did. So I wanted to actually incorporate the same feel from that track, but really change up the drop, something a little bit different. In this case, what I ended up doing was really changing just the melody on this particular track. So moving some of the notes around. This is actually running in G minor. And really using the same sort of automation that I've been using on my previous tracks to kind of give that analog feel. The main parts in this track, as you can hear, is if we were to say disable the main components of the automation on the... See if I just let me disable the automation. I don't want to delete it. Let me just... Okay, there we go. You can disable it there. And turn the ARP off. You'll hear that it's actually pretty stagnant sort of lead and rhythm. So that sounds really boring. So the main parts of this lead which really make it come alive is really around the automation. And also the ARP that's actually changing the rate progressively within the track at different steps. If we were to go into the Serum preset, there's actually not much to this. There's just a basic CJ shape into this with some slight attack. In envelope 2, we're actually using this envelope to open up the cutoff, and some very basic, really basic sort of effects, some hyperdimension, some distortion, some compression. We've got a reverb rack that's sitting behind it, which is adding a little bit of space. We're sidechaining that reverb to the kick, which is really important actually. One of the things that I tend to find a lot of new producers and a lot of the people that I have taken into my Patreon program when they start up is their reverb is all over the place. Reverb can add a lot of space, can also fill in a lot of space between synths, between drum patterns, between different elements in the mix. And it's really important that your reverb is actually controlled, whether that's side chaining the reverb directly to the main synth if you want to kind of have that reverb open up when the synthesizer is playing, or you want to have that reverb kind of sidechain to the kick to let the kick breathe, so basically avoiding any muddiness that may come out of it. Following that on, we've just got a little bit of EQ, taming some of those really high frequencies. We're doing a little bit of a boost here of around 1 dB, around 8K, and rolling some of the low end down at around 56. A little bit of compression, some auto filter, opening up the synth a little bit more in different places. Doing a little bit of clipping here, just taking off some of those peaks to then smash it with some compression and actually bring up some of those quiet parts further up. We then are using a little bit more compression to the kick, a little bit of Pro Q3, which is actually not doing anything there. So I could turn that off. I think this must have been a mistake. Yep. So this is the one that's actually doing something. And what I've done here, if you don't know how to do this, I had some competing components in this track with the lead in the drop. So what I ended up doing here was actually setting Pro Q3 to this bus, which is just called metal. That's just what I ended up calling the synth from the drop. Side chaining that, and basically this then grabs all the frequencies in that other synthesizer and pulls them down a little bit to let the other synth breathe a little bit in parts of the track. So if we were to run this together, if we go to a part of the, so a part in the track where they both play, which I think is around here. Let me have a look. Right here. Let's have a look.
The space between my body and my mind, where I just observe.
As you can see there's a lot of really high picks that are coming through. So I just found that it was competing quite a bit in that mid-range. It was sounding really muddy. So by doing that, I'm just actually carving some space in the sound. You can do this in other methods. You can do something like track spacer and sidechain that. But what I tend to find with that is it's very aggressive. Sometimes you don't need to actually sidechain the entire signal. This is a little bit more surgical. So I like doing it this way a little bit more. So that's the main lead. Let's go to the second part of this track, which is really the drop, which is this synth here. We've got actually quite a few layers that we are running. Didn't realize I had done so many, but it's actually quite a few layers that we're running. And this is back when I was still doing quite a lot of those anema style drops. I'm trying to move away from them because to me it just sounds oversaturated now, to tell you the truth. Every second track that I get, or I hear, or I get on promo, or I get submitted to my playlist, kind of sounds the same. So I think it's time to move on. It's been done to death. But I'm guilty of this as well, so which I did in this track. But to my defense, I wrote this track quite a few months ago. So anyways, what I've done here, I've got 3 layers. I've got a couple of serum layers, which I've just configured. I've gone through this before to kind of give it a little bit more of a twist on that sort of anema style lead, I guess you could call it. And by actually just using a little bit more surgical EQ on each one of these channels, I'm basically able to get a really nice sort of sound, which sounds a little bit different to what's been out there. So I'll let you hear what that sounds like. And the really interesting part about this track is that kind of wind up that you hear in this component here. And I think it's actually in the drop. Yes, it is. So this part here, I'll let you hear this part again. And all that really is, if you don't know how to, this is actually really simple. It's just using an ARP and setting the rate to free mode. As you can see here from the bottom left, changing the rate amount or automating the rate. So if you look at the rate knob down here, you will see that it actually progressively opens up and closes up. And that kind of gives you that wind up sound. And if we have a look at the MIDI, it's just a single note. It's just a single note on the G minor, which is just an elongated note. And what the arpeggiator is actually doing is just allowing that to open up very slowly as you automate the rate up and down. Or in this case, I'm automating the rate up. So it gives you that kind of wind up sort of sound. Besides that, this track is actually quite simple. The only other real part that kind of sticks to this is this supporting arp pattern that we've got down the bottom here, which is this one. And this sound is really just to filling some of the empty space that's actually sitting there as part of the track. And all we're doing is just automating certain components of this. In this part here, what are we doing? There we go. We're opening this up a little bit more in certain parts of the track. So as I said, this track is pretty much a recycle of Andromeda, but I have changed some of the components in there. And that's really it. I don't really want to go into any other parts of this track because I think I've covered how I do my kick and sub in other tutorials. But if you do want me to cover some of the other components in this track, please feel free to comment below. I think the most interesting part is definitely that kind of drop lead that comes in there and how the Andromeda lead is actually automated to kind of give us some life and make it seem a little bit more organic and not so robotic. So if you have enjoyed this track, please do try and support it on Beatport. It really does help me out. Give this video a thumbs up as well, and make sure you save the track as part of your favorites in Spotify. It really helps the algorithm. So without further ado, I'll just play a little bit more of the track, and this is Shay Jose signing out.